Immediately, 2 or 3 weeks later, he says, you know what, Debbie? No, she's pregnant. Denise Huxtable is not pregnant. Lisa Bonet is pregnant.
What if I told you that one of the most beloved TV shows of the 1980s and 90s was actually falling apart behind the scenes? That the cast was fighting with producers, the main star was kicked off the show, and the whole thing almost got canceled? Well, get ready, because today we're diving deep into the shocking secrets of a different world that most fans never knew about. You know that perfect college show that made you laugh, cry, and maybe even inspired you to apply to a historically black college? Yeah, that same show was secretly a disaster waiting to happen. The cast members have finally started talking about what really went on when the cameras stopped rolling, and trust me, you're not going to believe some of these stories. So grab some popcorn and settle in, because we're about to take you behind the scenes of one of television's most dramatic transformations. This is the untold story of how a show that was supposed to fail became a cultural phenomenon that changed lives forever. Let's start from the very beginning. Back in the 1980s, The Cosby Show was absolutely massive. We're talking about the biggest show on television, watched by millions of families every week. So naturally, the network executives were thinking about how they could make even more money from this success. Their brilliant idea? Create a spin-off show. But here's where things get really interesting. The original concept for A Different World wasn't what you think it was. The creators didn't want to make a show about Denise Huxtable going to college. No. Their first idea was completely different and honestly pretty wild. They wanted to create a show about a white student who decides to attend a historically black college. Can you imagine how that would have gone over? The producers were so serious about this idea that they actually considered casting Meg Ryan for the lead role. Yes, that me, G. Ryan from romantic comedies like When Harry Met Sally. Just picture her as the main character on A Different World instead of Lisa Bonet. It's almost impossible to imagine, right? But thankfully, someone came to their senses and realized that maybe that wasn't the best approach. So they pivoted and decided to focus on Denise Huxtable instead. But they still weren't completely ready to let go of their original idea. Their compromise was to give Denise a white roommate, which would create some of that culture clash they were originally looking for. This role went to a young actress named Marisa Tomei, who would later win an Academy Award for My Cousin Vinny. Now, you might think that having a star from The Cosby Show would make everything smooth sailing, but you'd be completely wrong. From day one, this production was an absolute mess. The first pilot episode they filmed was so terrible that they literally threw it in the trash. But it gets worse. They actually filmed 4 complete episodes and then scrapped all of them because they were just that bad. Can you imagine being an actor on that set? You film 4 episodes thinking you're doing great work, and then someone comes in and tells you that everything you just did is getting thrown away. Talk about a confidence killer. With the show supposed to premiere soon, the network was in full panic mode. They brought in a new producer and gave this person just 6 weeks to create a brand new pilot from scratch. 6 weeks. Most shows take months to develop a single episode, and this team had to rebuild the entire concept in less than 2 months. Somehow they managed to pull it off, and A Different World finally premiered in 1987. And you know what? Despite all the chaos behind the scenes, viewers absolutely loved it. The show had the perfect time slot, sandwiched right between The Cosby Show and Cheers, which were 2 of the most popular shows on television at the time. Millions of people tuned in every week. But here's where things get really brutal. While audiences were watching and loving the show, the critics were absolutely destroying it. We're talking about some of the worst reviews you've ever seen for a hit show. Critics called it boring, childish, and unfunny. They said it was just a weak copy of The Cosby Show with none of the charm or intelligence. The first season of A Different World has an 11% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. 11%. That's almost impressively bad. One journalist said the show received one of the biggest waves of negative reviews ever seen for a series that was actually successful with viewers. The main complaint from critics was that the show felt completely fake and unrealistic. Even though it was set at Hillman College, a fictional historically black university in Virginia, it didn't actually show what life at a black college was really like. The students were never seen studying or going to class. It was like they were just hanging out at summer camp instead of getting an education. So here you have this weird situation where millions of people are watching and enjoying the show. But every critic and reviewer is saying it's terrible. That's already a pretty stressful situation for everyone involved, but the real drama was just getting started. The biggest bombshell came when Lisa Bonet, the show's main star, made an announcement that would change everything. In the summer of 1988, Lisa and her husband at the time, rock star Lenny Kravitz, revealed that they were expecting a baby. Now, for most actors, having a baby might mean taking a short break from work. But for Lisa, this pregnancy was about to cause a massive behind-the-scenes battle. The show had just hired a new producer named Debbie Allen, who was a legendary director and choreographer. Debbie saw Lisa's pregnancy as an incredible opportunity to make the show more realistic and groundbreaking. She thought having a storyline about a young pregnant college student would be powerful and important. It was exactly the kind of real-life issue she wanted the show to tackle. But Bill Cosby, who was the creator and executive producer of both The Cosby Show and A Different World, had very different ideas. When Debbie suggested incorporating Lisa's pregnancy into the show, Cosby shut it down immediately. He made his position crystal clear. Lisa Bonet could be pregnant in real life, but her character Denise Huxtable absolutely could not be pregnant on the show. Cosby's reasoning was all about image and branding. For 4 seasons on The Cosby Show, Denise had been portrayed as a good girl from a respectable middle-class family. Cosby believed that viewers would never accept seeing her as an unmarried pregnant college student. He was fiercely protective of the wholesome image of the Huxtable family and refused to let anything damage that reputation. This created a massive conflict behind the scenes. On one side, you had Debbie Allen, who wanted to tell realistic, challenging stories that would resonate with young viewers. On the other side, you had Bill Cosby, who wanted to protect his brand and the family-friendly image he had worked so hard to build. And caught right in the middle of this battle was Lisa Bonet, who was just trying to do her job while dealing with a pregnancy. In the end, Bill Cosby won the fight. The decision was made that Denise would not be pregnant on A Different World. But instead of just hiding Lisa's pregnancy with creative camera work or loose clothing, they made a much more dramatic choice. Lisa Bonet was written off the show completely. The writers explained her absence by having Denise drop out of Hillman College and return home to live with her family on The Cosby Show. Just like that, the main character of A Different World was gone after just 1 season. Can you imagine how shocking that must have been for fans who were just getting invested in the show? But what fans didn't know at the time was that the situation on set had become even more toxic and uncomfortable. Years later, Jasmine Guy, who played the Southern belle Whitley Gilbert, revealed some disturbing details about how Lisa Bonet was treated during her final episodes. According to Jasmine, the producers were openly disrespectful to Lisa in front of the live studio audience. They would get right up in her face, point their fingers at her, and aggressively tell her to just say her lines and not cause any problems. Imagine being pregnant and having to deal with that kind of hostile work environment while performing in front of hundreds of people. Jasmine Guy was so disgusted by what she witnessed that she actually tried to quit the show in protest. She marched into the producer's office and gave them her 2 weeks' notice. When they asked if anything had happened to her personally, she stood her ground and said something incredibly powerful. "If it happens to her, it happens to me. You are disrespecting the cast. It doesn't have to happen to me personally for me to feel like it's happening to me." That kind of loyalty and solidarity between cast members is pretty rare in Hollywood, where people are usually more concerned about protecting their own careers than standing up for their colleagues. So now, a different world was in serious trouble. They had lost their main star. Their reputation was in shambles because of all the bad reviews, and the show was on the verge of being canceled. That's when Debbie Allen stepped up and completely transformed everything. Debbie Allen wasn't just any producer. She was a graduate of Howard University, which is a real and prestigious historically black college. She actually understood what life at an HBCU was really like, unlike the previous producers who had just been making stuff up. She was determined to bring authenticity to the show and make it something that students and alumni of black colleges could actually relate to. The first thing Debbie did was completely overhaul the look and feel of the show. She redesigned the set for the Pit, which was the campus restaurant where all the students hung out. She made it look more like a real college dining area and made sure the kitchen staff and workers were visible, because that's how it would be in real life. She also got rid of the generic cheerleader-style costumes that the cast had been wearing in the first season and brought in more authentic fashion that actually reflected how college students dressed. Debbie was so focused on bringing discipline and energy to the production that she even made the entire cast do morning workouts before filming. Can you imagine showing up to work and having to do sit-ups and stretches before you could even get into costume? With Lisa Bonet gone, Debbie knew the show couldn't revolve around just one character anymore. So she made the brilliant decision to turn it into a true ensemble show, focusing on the entire group of students at Hillman College. She took two characters who had been supporting players in the first season, Whitley Gilbert and Dwayne Wayne, and moved them to the center of the story. This decision would end up creating one of the most beloved and iconic couples in television history. The relationship between Whitley and Dwayne became the heart and soul of the show, and fans are still talking about them decades later. But Debbie Allen didn't stop there. She did something that was completely revolutionary for a television show at that time. Every year, she would take the entire writing staff on field trips to Atlanta, where they would visit real HBCUs like Spelman College and Morehouse College. They would walk around the campuses, check out the latest dorm room styles and fashions, and most importantly, they would actually talk to real students and faculty members. Many of the show's most famous and impactful episodes came directly from stories and issues they learned about during these research trips. Debbie also empowered her actors in a way that was pretty rare in Hollywood. She saw them as partners in the storytelling process, rather than just people who showed up to say their lines. She asked each cast member to write down 10 story ideas they would personally like to see their characters explore. Then she took those lists directly to the writer's room, and several of those actor-generated ideas actually made it into episodes. For the first time, the actors felt like their voices were being heard and that they had some creative control over their characters. This collaborative approach created a much more positive and productive work environment. Most importantly, Debbie Allen made a different world brave. While The Cosby Show had carefully avoided controversial topics to maintain its family-friendly image, Debbie dove headfirst into the most important and difficult issues of the day. Under her leadership, A Different World became a platform for discussing apartheid in South Africa, date rape, domestic violence, and the HIV/AIDS epidemic. The show was no longer just a sitcom designed to make people laugh. It had become a cultural conversation starter that tackled real problems affecting young people. Now, while all this dramatic transformation was happening on screen, the cast members were dealing with their own complicated personal lives off camera. And some of the real-life relationships between the actors were way more interesting than what viewers were seeing on their television screens. Everyone remembers the will-they-won't-they romance between Dwayne Wayne and Whitley Gilbert that played out over several seasons. Their chemistry was absolutely electric, and fans were completely invested in whether they would end up together. But what most people didn't know was that the real love story was happening between two completely different cast members. Kadeem Hardison, who played Dwayne Wayne, was actually in a serious relationship with Cree Summer, who played the free-spirited activist Freddie Brooks. They were together for about 3 years, from 1989 to 1992, right during the height of the show's popularity. Their romance started as a deep friendship. They were best friends who shared a love for riding motorcycles and collecting comic books. One day, while they were out riding their bikes, Cree pulled over and did something incredibly brave. She looked at Kadeem and said, "I love you. I think I'm in love with you." Kadeem was completely shocked at first. He had never thought about his best friend in a romantic way. But then he really thought about it and realized that it actually made perfect sense. She was already his best friend, so why not take it to the next level? In later interviews, Cree described Kadeem as the blueprint for first love. He said he was kind, generous, and funny as hell. Their relationship was so serious that if you watch closely during the opening credits of Season 5, you can actually catch them sneaking a quick kiss in the background. Unfortunately, they broke up before the show ended, which must have been incredibly difficult since they still had to work together every single day, but somehow they managed to remain close friends throughout the rest of the series. The romantic web was even more complicated than that, though. Before Kadeem started dating Cree, he had a massive crush on Jasmine Guy, who played Whitley. They had actually met before A Different World while working on the Spike Lee movie School Days. Kadeem was only 20 years old at the time, while Jasmine was 24, and she felt he was just too young for her to take seriously. But Kadeem was completely smitten. During a party on the set of School Days, he was so desperate to keep dancing with Jasmine that he secretly asked the DJ to play a slow song a second time, just so he could hold on to that moment a little longer. There was another secret, long-lasting love story that came out of A Different World, and this one involved a member of the Huxtable family. Darrell M. Bell, who played Dwayne's best friend Ron Johnson, first met actress Tempest Bledsoe in 1989 when she made a guest appearance on the show. Of course, everyone knew Tempest as Vanessa Huxtable from The Cosby Show. A few years after meeting on A Different World, they started dating. And get this, they're still together today. They've been in a committed and happy relationship for nearly 3 decades, though they never actually got married. So while viewers were watching all this romantic drama play out between the characters on screen, the real-life cast was dealing with their own complicated love triangle and long-term relationships behind the scenes. But even with all this personal drama, the cast still had to come together to create some of the most memorable moments in television history. And believe it or not, the show's most iconic scene almost didn't happen because the 2 main actors absolutely hated the idea. Every fan of A Different World remembers the legendary wedding episode where Dwayne Wayne crashes Whitley Gilbert's wedding to another man and begs her not to go through with it. It's one of the most romantic and dramatic scenes in TV history, and people still get emotional watching it today. But behind the scenes, both Kadeem Hardison and Jasmine Guy thought the whole thing was a terrible idea. When Jasmine first read the script, she told the writers she thought it was whack and corny. Kadeem agreed completely. He felt that having Dwayne crash his friend's wedding and steal his fiancée was unrealistic and went against everything his character stood for. Kadeem was so opposed to the storyline that he actually pitched an alternative to the writers. He suggested that Dwayne should go see Whitley the night before the wedding to confess his feelings privately, hoping that would be enough to stop her from going through with the marriage. The writers liked his idea, but they still wanted the big doctor, a dramatic confrontation at the church. They refused to change the script, which left Kadeem feeling frustrated and conflicted about the whole thing. On the day they filmed the scene, Kadeem was so nervous and uncomfortable with what his character was doing that when he ran down the aisle, his mind went completely blank. He totally forgot all of his scripted lines. So instead of delivering the dialogue the writers had written, he just yelled from his heart, "Baby, please, please!" Jasmine, who was standing at the altar in her wedding dress, could barely hear what he was saying, but she knew she had to react to whatever was happening. That raw, unscripted plea was so powerful and emotional that they captured the perfect moment on the very first take. A scene that both actors thought would be a complete disaster became legendary because of a last-minute mistake and some genuine emotion. Sometimes the best television happens when things don't go according to plan. That wasn't the only battle the show fought, though. A Different World also took on corporate advertisers and network executives to tell important stories that other shows were afraid to touch. In 1991, Debbie Allen was determined to create an episode about the HIV/AIDS crisis, which was a topic that no other sitcom had been brave enough to address. But when the show's corporate sponsors heard about the plan, they completely panicked. Major advertisers started pulling their funding left and right, refusing to have their products associated with such a controversial subject. The episode, which was titled "If I Should Die Before I Wake," was in serious danger of being shut down before it could even be filmed. Debbie Allen knew she needed some serious star power to win this fight, so she made a personal phone call to her friend Whoopi Goldberg, who was one of the biggest and most respected entertainers in the world at that time. Without any hesitation, Whoopi agreed to guest star in the episode. Her involvement gave the network the courage they needed to stand up to the advertisers and air the show anyway. The episode became the highest rated in the entire series' history, and Debbie Allen later said that Whoopi's willingness to help made it possible to save millions of lives by educating the public at a time when fear and misinformation about AIDS were everywhere. After 6 successful seasons, A Different World came to an end in 1993, but the cast members' lives after leaving Hillman College have been filled with their own unexpected challenges, surprising triumphs, and personal battles that most fans never knew about. Sinbad, who played the big-hearted gym teacher and dorm director Walter Oakes, left the show after season 4 and became a massive star in stand-up comedy and movies like House Guest and Jingle All the Way. But in 2020, at the age of 64, his life changed forever when he suffered a major stroke. The stroke was so severe that it left him unable to move the left side of his body. For 2 years, his family kept his condition private while he underwent grueling physical therapy. He's now slowly and painfully relearning how to walk, and in a message to his fans, Sinbad promised he will not stop fighting until he can walk across a stage again. Darrell M. Bell faced a completely different kind of battle. His father was a financial pioneer who founded the first black-owned firm on the New York Stock Exchange. When his father passed away unexpectedly in 1988, 24-year-old Darrell was named executor of his $14 million estate. While he was still acting on A Different World, he found himself in the middle of a painful and very public family legal battle. His own stepmother and aunt sued him, accusing him of mismanaging the family fortune. The case was eventually dismissed, but it was an incredibly difficult experience for such a young person to handle. Dawn Lewis, who played the mature and driven Jaleesa Vincent, faced her own set of industry challenges. She actually co-wrote the show's iconic theme song with Bill Cosby, but she was told she couldn't be the one to sing it. The producers felt that since she was in the cast but wasn't the main star, performing the theme song would give her too much attention and upset the show's balance. After 5 seasons, she left A Different World for a starring role in a new sitcom called Hangin' with Mr. Cooper. But after just 1 season, the producers of that show decided to change directions, and her character was written out completely. Dawn has since spoken openly about the invisible ceiling that black actresses often face in Hollywood, where they're given opportunities but then have those opportunities taken away without explanation. While many of her castmates continued working in front of the camera, Cree Summer built a secret empire with just her voice. After A Different World ended, she quietly became one of the most successful and sought-after voice actors in entertainment history. You may not have seen her face on screen much, but you have definitely heard her voice. She's played over 100 characters in some of the most beloved cartoons of all time, including Susie Carmichael in Rugrats, Elmira Duff in Tiny Toon Adventures, and dozens of other iconic animated characters. Jasmine Guy and Kadeem Hardison have both continued to have long and successful careers in entertainment. Jasmine has appeared in numerous television shows, including recurring roles on The Vampire Diaries, and has also become a respected director and activist for various social causes. Kadeem has worked constantly in both film and television, starring alongside Zendaya in the Disney Channel series KC Undercover, and appearing in critically acclaimed shows like Black Monday. The Journey of a Different World is honestly one of the most amazing comeback stories in television history. It started as a bland, critically panned spin-off that was on the verge of complete failure. The main star was forced out, the reviews were terrible, and everyone expected it to be canceled after one season. But through conflict, courage, and the revolutionary vision of Debbie Allen, it transformed into a cultural landmark that inspired an entire generation. The show led to a massive increase in enrollment at real historically black colleges and universities, as young people saw themselves represented on screen in a way they never had before. Today, new generations continue to discover a different world through streaming services and reruns, finding that the issues it tackled decades ago are still incredibly relevant today. The cast recent. Italy reunited for a sold-out tour of HBCUs across the country, bringing the story of Hillman College full circle and showing that the impact of the show is still being felt today. The ultimate secret of A Different World is that the perfect, polished show that fans fell in love with was actually born from complete chaos and brave defiance behind the scenes. The struggles that the cast and crew endured while making the show are exactly what gave it its authentic, unbreakable heart. So there you have it, the incredible untold story of A Different World. From near cancellation to cultural phenomenon, from cast conflicts to lasting friendships, this show proved that sometimes the best art comes from the most difficult circumstances. If this story amazed you as much as it amazed me, please hit that like button to let me know. Share this video with anyone who loves great television or needs to hear an inspiring story about overcoming obstacles. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell, because we've got so many more incredible behind-the-scenes stories coming your way. Trust me, you won't want to miss what we're uncovering next.